We are a vegan couple from Massachusetts. I'm Logical Consistency. Brandon, the owner of this channel. This is my lovely fiance,
Hi, I'm Julia.
Julia. And we are going to be reacting to carnivore nonsense. I'm a little bit sick, so forgive me. And I hope that we can make this an ongoing series, but we'll see how it goes. So this guy, his name is AREN or Eron Edwards. So I don't know, he's got a few thousand subs, I think. And I found his video pop up. I think he used to be a raw vegan, and we all know how those raw vegans go. So now he's full-on carnivore, and he has a video called "If We Aren't Carnivores, Explain This." So we're gonna take a look. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am at this point in life where I believe that humans are undisputably, irrefutably, unequivocally carnivores.
No.
Really quick. So
No.
just for a little bit of context, he has so many videos where he compares himself as a vegan to a carnivore, and he looks so thin, starved, anorexic. He literally looks like somebody who was starved, and that's because he was. So
On the raw vegan diet?
yeah, well, right before he
Probably.
went carnivore, he did a 22-day water fast. So he was already really lean to begin with, and then when you don't eat for 22 days, yeah, you kind of you're gonna be incredibly thin and frail and feel awful. It's very common with like raw vegans or ex-vegans, now carnivore, to have like starved themselves because they think they're healing themselves with fasting, and then all of a sudden they eat high calorie diet and they feel so much better. Any thoughts here?
I just didn't think he was gonna say carnivores. Like only carnivores?
Yeah.
So he literally thinks that we
Without a doubt, we're
are supposed to
carnivores.
just only eat meat.
Eat steak and butter. That's the diet he's been doing.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
we're
Okay,
gonna take a
let's
look.
go.
Okay.
Hold on. The meat with the glitter. The meat with the glitter.
Yeah. Oh, eggs, I guess he's been doing.
Of course.
And
Oh.
it's basically due to the fact that I've seen these truths that I can't unsee. There's a beautiful quote.
So I love when the ex-vegans and their journeys. He says, I've heard and I've seen some truths
The truth.
that I can't unsee. That sounds just like an anecdote. That sounds like just his personal experience. So we're gonna see.
By Ralph Emerson, I believe it goes, "The mind, once stretched by a new idea, can never return to its original dimensions." And that's where I
Great.
want feedback in this video, because I was vegan for years and it didn't agree with me.
Real quick, so this is what I'm talking about. So he said he was vegan, and he has a photo of himself with about 50 bananas. That's not going to be an adequate vegan
I'm
diet.
getting a very extreme vibe here, from one extreme to the other,
Right.
obviously. It's a beautiful quote. You
Yeah.
know, it basically says once you learn something, you can't go back from learning it, which is true.
It is a great quote. It sounds like this guy is just getting less intelligent, though, if I had to guess. But when it comes to this picture, like, I just love, like, if you looked up vegan on Google, this is the picture that would come up of like the
I feel like,
stereotypical
yeah,
vegan.
this is what people make fun of.
Right.
Like, oh, you're vegan. I'm like, no, I'm not carrying around, 65 bananas on my shoulder.
With a man bun.
Yeah.
Super thin as it is. Like, he
looks tired.
right, exhausted. And that's the thing is, like, you should not be vegan this way,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you really shouldn't.
You should, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
You have something to add?
No, go ahead.
It didn't help me feel my best. Like, for perspective, in my personal life, I've been eating a carnivore diet for 2 or 3 months now. That's it. And already the results have been life-changing.
So 2 or 3 months, again, 2 or 3 months, if you go from starving yourself to eating an adequate amount of calories and at least protein and stuff like that,
Right.
you're gonna feel better.
better.
You're gonna
Yeah.
feel, if you go from being like 20 pounds underweight to being a healthy weight, you're gonna feel better.
Yeah, right. If you're eating enough, yeah, you'll feel good.
Yeah, and that
Because
tells
you
us,
should.
and that tells us nothing about like the long-term health effects of a carnivore diet at all. Just this 2 to 3 months experiment here.
I don't know how else to put it. I've put on 30 pounds. And I know that's not good news for most people, but For me, I needed it, and I really struggled to
Yeah.
gain weight plant-based.
He was
No,
110.
no. So he just said he really struggled to gain weight plant-based, which is such a dishonest thing for him to say. That photo, this is what I'm talking about. That photo or that video of him at 110 pounds, that was after 22 days of fasting. 22 days of not eating anything.
Right.
Just drinking water. I didn't even know how he lived. Like, people can die fasting that long.
Yeah.
So to say that, wow, I struggle gaining weight as a vegan is completely dishonest. You struggle
Yeah, I
gaining
feel
weight-
like it's so misleading. It has nothing to do with being vegan. It literally is simply just not eating enough.
And it's just really sad because, like I said, this guy's got like 15,000 subs, and in the comments, everyone's like, "This has been my experience, and now I'm carnivore." Like, carnivore is really getting a lot of people who, either jumped into things without enough education,
Right.
or are hypochondriacs, or probably have underlying conditions like eating disorders or whatever,
Right.
and they're just going from one extreme to another, and it's yeah.
It's giving, I feel like there is a trend where people go vegan with this idea of like, I need to cleanse, like the same thing as doing a fast for 22 days. It's this like wanting to just clear the whole body out, get rid of any food inside the body. But that's not what veganism is. Like, it's not about, diet or,
Yeah.
like it's not a cleanse. It's a moral position, and it is healthier. But
And
it's not I feel like this is just such a wrong idea of what veganism is.
And whenever people talk about like a diet in like its healing and refer to its
Right.
healing properties, that's the first red flag, right? There's no one diet that's going to heal all of your ailments,
Right.
right? You still might have to work around digestive issues. You still might have to do these things. Just because you're experiencing different conditions, it doesn't mean you just not eat for 22 days and think you're somehow going to heal. Or maybe don't eat 50 bananas. He was probably having horrible digestive pains because he was eating however many bananas he was eating a day.
Yeah. And I feel like too, the marketing to these people, and I feel like this is a huge trend just in society as a whole, where it's like, you're dirty, and you need to do a cleanse. We need to do a cleanse. You're, like, you're dirty. The way you've been living is dirty. What you've been eating is dirty, and it's like kind of targeting to that fear in your mind. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's also the whole like primal, the whole like natural marketing where,
Right.
the Western diet, which the Western diet is awful, but the traditional or standard American diet, but there's nothing like healing, or there's no like magic here.
Right.
Okay, I'm much closer to my ideal body composition now than I ever have been for many
Ideal
years on
body
this healing journey.
composition,
Okay,
That's
I
not a
have more
shocker.
energy than I've had in years, and it's not just physical
Again,
benefits. I like my
Calories.
mental.
Just eating the right amount of
it's just the
calories.
calories. It's just when you say you have more energy, you putting on weight, he's about to say he has more mental clarity. I can tell by what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's just calories. It's
Right.
just calories.
Faculties are sharper. They are crisper.
course.
I feel more clarity.
Wow.
I feel more peace. I feel happier. My mood is improving. My libido is improving. I'm sleeping better. I'm sorry. It's just exciting to share all these amazing changes I've experienced in my body. The last time I recorded a video in this shirt, like, you can literally see the difference in my face. Okay, the last video was about
he was
a month
starving.
into
You could look
carnivore,
that
and
same
now
way
I'm
if you
maybe
ate
2 or
enough
3 months in. Okay,
Yes.
you can literally see the
Plant-based food.
difference in my face, in the vitality that I have in my whole body. Okay, so
To be honest, he doesn't
why am
look
I
that
sharing
bad in
all
that
this? Well,
video
obviously,
also.
I've come to this video from a bit of a biased perspective. Okay, but at the same time, I haven't. Right? Like, I really
Okay.
wanted this video to
That's
start
Scratch that.
conversation, because I
Contradiction.
want to stay open. You have to understand that I was vegan for many years, and like, I'll probably get in the comments, "Oh, you were never vegan."
Yeah, I was gonna say he wasn't vegan. He might have been plant-based, or he was following some kind of healing journey. But
I would say he had disordered eating.
Yeah, that would be.
That's
probably
what I would
better.
call it.
Yeah, he was on a food journey filled with disorders. He was not like vegan. I don't think he really cared about veganism.
But I went vegan for the reasons most people do. With the welfare of the planet, of the animals, and above all, I
now
really
you eat
thought it
nothing
was
but
the holy
steak and butter?
grail for what humans are,
Which I don't hold up
designed to be
anymore.
eating to feel optimal. And my own experience has taught me otherwise. And there was just certain questions I've always had around plant-based eating? And if it was optimal, then how are these kind of truths existing in my mind? So in this video, I want to share.
If it was optimal, how are these truths existing in my mind? What does that mean? Like, there's all of these ex-vegans, all they do is they just speak gibberish, but they think they're like communicating something really profound.
Right.
Truths that exist in my mind. Are they objective truths? Are they like peer-reviewed facts backed up in studies? Like, no, they're just things that you've come to conclusions on in your head that may or may not actually be true.
Right. He's kind of just talking in this like dreamy like way,
Right.
like with a glisten in his eyes, like, just trust me.
Just trust me, dude.
These truths in my head.
And also the word optimal, again, what does that mean? Like,
Right.
people use these words optimal as if it's like a cure-all, where it's like, dude, you're still gonna have like regular human issues. You're not gonna feel great one day. You might feel better the next day.
Right.
You might have a weird bathroom visit one morning, you know? Like, these things happen, and that's all right.
You know, I will say, and this is just my own
It's just the truth in your mind.
Yeah, this is the truth in my mind. I had weird bathroom visits before I went vegan, and I never had that again, besides getting like a random stomach bug. We can cut this out if you want.
No, we'll keep it.
But yeah, I don't know why I said that.
It's okay.
Maybe you cut it out.
No, we'll keep it.
Anywho.
There are a bunch of ideas I have, and if anyone has any feedback or answers to
We
these
do.
probing questions, I pray that you enlighten me.
We're here to
One last
enlighten.
thing before we get started, I will note that, you know, people, you might suggest
Where
that
is he
humans
with
are
these
actually
leaves?
omnivores because we can, you know, eat plants as
Humans
well.
omnivores?
And honestly, it really just depends on how you want to define it. Okay, because yes, I grant we can eat plants.
Okay.
However, there's no actual need for it. We can survive, and we see populations living healthfully, almost excluding plants. And
Okay, so here's the problem. You've kind of already debunked yourself, sir. So you just said that without a doubt, you know for a fact that humans are carnivores. Yet you just pulled up the definition and admitted that we can eat plants. Not needing to eat plants doesn't mean we're carnivores. Those are two very different things, right? We're not obligate carnivores. But also, the best peer-reviewed research we have shows better health outcomes with a higher intake of plants, fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Vegans are at the lowest risk of most of our chronic diseases, obesity, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. So again, I just don't know where he's getting this from. He's just kind of making it up.
I feel bad because I feel like he's such a sweet guy. But he's just wrong.
And yeah, I mean, a lot of these people, they seem to be like genuine,
Right.
in the sense of like they're really
trying.
They're kind of sick, and they're really trying to
Right.
figure out like their health and what's going on. But the whole comparison seems super dishonest. So I don't know. I actually don't think he's that sweet. Where he's comparing his 22-day fast, like you know better than that.
Well, yeah, I guess we're only 3.5 minutes in,
Yeah,
so
we'll keep it going for a second.
entirely from their diet, from time to time
We
here and
keep
there
it.
seasonally, okay? But like they're not essential. There's no essential carbohydrates. So in my mind, we are carnivores because that's
What?
all we actually need.
So, sorry, you want to say?
no, go on.
So we run on carbohydrates, right? So like, yeah, in like ketosis, right? If you do a keto diet where you're like essentially starving your body of carbohydrates, your body will convert fat into energy, right? In the form of ketones, I believe that's how the process works. But that's not like if we're throwing the word optimal around here, that's not like an optimal state. It's like you have to convert fat into energy. Your brain, our bodies run on carbohydrates.
To thrive. All right, so the way I'm going to frame this video is like this. I ask the question, if we are not carnivores and we are designed to be eating more predominantly plants, then why,
Ooh,
etc.
hold on.
Okay.
What was the question?
I need the tongue. Hold on.
He said it's
Hold on.
And why,
Oh my God, he did the tongue flap.
Is
and
that the
everything.
question?
No, he's saying how he's gonna frame it.
Then why?
Why? Tongue.
Then how come I can do this?
etc. Okay, here we go.
One perfect
Okay,
food.
first
A
up,
sausage.
if humans aren't carnivores, then why is meat the only food we can live solely off of? You know, if we're looking at food like
Who says that?
For how long? Also, for how long? Like, what about vitamin C? What about fiber? I know meat, depending on the type of meat. I know skeletal muscle tissue, you definitely can't live solely off of. I know some people say like skeletal muscle tissue with like liver because of there's vitamins in like vitamin A and stuff in liver, but you're still devoid of fiber. You're still devoid of vitamin C. So, and for how long, right? Yeah, you could live off of it. I could live off nothing but potatoes for a long time. I could probably live nothing but potatoes for like probably years.
Right. There's people that like have lived off of
all types of stuff.
Pizza or mac and cheese for like a decade.
Yeah, in fact, I watched this documentary where it was like My Strange Food or whatever, whatever it was. And it was a guy who eats nothing but mac and cheese, store-bought mac and cheese. He eats that 3 times a day. He's been eating that for like 20 years. Okay, are we going to say, like, apparently you can live solely off of mac and cheese. So I don't understand. That's such a stupid argument.
Like one singular food that we can live on exclusively, the only food that fits that criteria is meat. There's no plant you can live exclusively on, just meat. You know, if humans
what does that
aren't
mean?
carnivores
The idea is that you
nature,
pick one plant.
why would
and
that
just
be
eat
the
it forever.
case? You know, and further, kind of expanding on this idea, why is it that the ratio of amino acids found in meat are in near perfect balance for the needs and requirements of our body? You know, like,
I mean, I know what animal flesh is more of a complete protein than just isolated plants, but that's the beauty of it is you don't have to isolate plants. Animal flesh, just like human flesh, is a complete protein because it's literally it's literal flesh, right? It's muscle. So yeah, I mean that's fine. We could say that like a piece of steak is more complete than just soy or just black beans or just pea protein isolate. But when you combine plants and you get a variety of plant proteins, the effect is the same. As long as you get an adequate amount of protein, you're going to be fine. You're not going to be protein deficient.
To me, this seems a little bit beyond coincidence, almost as if our bodies actually evolutionarily adapted to have our needs met by the most available food source that was available to us for most of our existence as a species. Like, to me, that makes sense, right?
But here's the thing. It doesn't really matter what we used to do or what we adapted from. Like, did we adapt from having insulated homes and heating? Did we adapt from having computers and technology and cars and all of the luxuries we enjoy today? No, of course not. But they make our lives better, right? So in the case of a vegan diet, we may not have, we may have evolved from eating a combination of meat and plants, or maybe, for argument's sake, even if we were eating more meat than plants. How does that determine what's beneficial for us now and what we should be doing? That's why we have to look to the science, right? And he's saying that seems like too much of a coincidence. That implies some kind of like, I don't know if he's coming at it from like a divine position or like some type of like intention with our creation or something, but it just, again, it's not going off of the science.
Yeah, I was going to say it kind of seems to come at it from like an evolution standpoint, but the whole point is not to go backwards, right? So like we don't need to go back to hunting and
right. Like, why would we
animals.
stay doing what we were doing thousands of years ago if the science we have shows that not only can we be just as healthy, but there actually are benefits to a whole food plant-based diet now. The biggest being that is more ethical, right? You don't have to kill billions of animals just to feed yourself. You don't have to do that anymore.
You know, going even further on this, why is it that people with the most severe autoimmune conditions oftentimes only find relief when they switch to an all-meat diet, right? Like, why would it be?
It's an elimination diet. So pretty much, let's say you're eating a variety of plant foods like you should, and then all of a sudden you take out all of the foods and you just put steak in there. Whatever food was causing the inflammatory response or the autoimmune response or the intolerance, you've now eliminated.
Right.
Bingo.
And most of them are like dairy.
Right. So if people aren't forget about it from a vegan diet, if people are coming from an omnivorous diet, having autoimmune issues, which a lot of people actually don't come from vegan to carnivore. They go from regular standard American diet to carnivore.
Right.
So it could be dairy. It could be a vegetable. It could be a fruit they're eating. It could be, who knows what's causing the autoimmune issues. It could be none of that, right? Who knows? That's why, again, we have to go off the science, not just anecdotes. Oh, I stopped eating everything I was eating, just ate steak and butter, and now my joints feel better, right? We can't really rely on that. It's not what's the word? Not accurate, but it's just not reliable.
If we aren't carnivores, that the people that are the most sick find the most relief when they exclude plants entirely from their diet. I mean, again, I'm not trying to provide answers, but my little theory to this is that our bodies aren't designed to digest plants. And those who are very strong can do it and live pretty well on them. But those who are weaker, like myself for all those years, we don't have the luxury of being able to digest plants. So you see these people with these autoimmune.
If you are eating mostly raw food and then you're starving yourself, I don't really want to hear your experience is just not accurate, right? Like if you were eating cooked foods and this and that and you still had issues, guess what? There's workarounds to that too. But if you're eating nothing but bananas, yeah, I'm not surprised if your tummy felt weird.
Conditions, they go to an all meat diet, and oftentimes an all red meat diet, just ruminant animals, what I think is the most biologically appropriate
what has been most
meat for
condemned.
humans: red meat, lamb, bison, beef, those sorts of things. Their symptoms either drastically improve or are alleviated altogether.
Is red
provided
meat
that they
not
stick on
strongly
this diet. And then
connected to cancers?
I don't know much at the table. Yeah, it is. So he said hilariously what has been most condemned.
Right, it's not condemned. It's just proven.
Yeah, well, associated. Yeah, it's strongly associated to increase the risk of heart disease, to increase the risk of different types of cancers.
Is it not a carcinogen?
I believe red meat is a class 2A or 2B carcinogen. Processed meats are class 1 carcinogens. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's not like. I love how all these people, they think it's like some kind of conspiracy theory.
Right, it's been condemned.
Like the elites are like, you can't eat meat anymore, even though red meat is a $1 billion industry. Like, they're acting as if red meat is some underground thing that no one has heard of, and they're trying to take it away. It's literally, if not trillions, $1 billion industry. All of these red meat and chicken and all these industries. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Oftentimes, they'll bring in a couple plants and feel a lot worse. So if humans aren't carnivores, why would all of that be the case?
Well, what are you doing?
I can't help it.
Oh, I can't wait
I
for
need
this
the
one.
meat. The baby needs the meat.
If humans are not carnivores, why is meat so satisfying? Why is it so delicious? To suggest that humans aren't carnivore is to...
I think that humans are actually designed to eat the cookie and donut diet. If humans, it's so satisfying. It's so delicious when you put cookies and donuts in your mouth. I am convinced that the best thing for our health is cookies and donuts.
Yeah, listen, for me personally, I was never into meat. There was nothing intuitively satisfying about it for me. It actually always freaked me out. So as an antidote, I guess that's not true for me at all.
Also, it might be like intuitive when it's already, when the animal's already killed, skinned, cut up, the meat's already on the grill with seasoning, seasoned with plants, barbecue sauce, mustard, whatever you're putting on it, and then prepared nicely and given to you. Then it might be intuitive. But I think Gary Yourofsky made this scenario or gave this example where if you gave a person or a child like a baby piglet and an apple, the child's not going to strangle the piglet to eat its flesh, right? It's going to play with the piglet and eat the apple. I would actually argue most adults wouldn't strangle the piglet and eat the apple. I would say that killing another like clearly conscious animal isn't intuitive. You can people get over those negative feelings for survival, but it's not intuitive. I couldn't kill unless I was like in an absolute dire situation.
Who suggests that humans are the only animal whose natural instincts betray them, right? Like every animal on the face of the earth, their palate is specifically designed to crave the flavors of foods that are going to nourish their body. That's how taste works. That's why things taste good, because we are attracted to them and we know, okay.
Dude, I really love like smoothies and rice and beans and I really love all these foods. I don't know what he's talking like. Is he trying to say that like most vegans are like holding their nose trying to sculpt these plants down or something?
But also, I am craving Sour Patch Kids.
Right.
But those are not going to nutritionally
so when
benefit
kids
me.
like want the chocolate bar every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we should just like intuitively let them eat. I don't understand.
No, I feel like that's the danger of, we've talked about this, like people that are like, well, just like, how do you feel?
Yeah.
And it's...
You can't going off of how you feel
is
you learn
dangerous.
very quickly that you're not that as reliable as you want to think you are.
Right. Well, because depending on what you've got going on, like for some people, some people struggle with hunger cues, right? So if they went off of how they felt all of the time, then they would not eat. And that's obviously not nutritionally optimal
Yeah,
for.
there's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of like
Right.
disorders and mental health issues that could influence how you're feeling one way or another.
Eat that is safe, that's going to be nourishing for my body. And things that don't taste good, we're like, oh, spit that out, right? I don't want that. Now, so you might think this is a trivial
You just spit that out. I don't want it. I don't want it. But the cookies and the donuts, yes.
Right.
Please give it to me.
statement, but the fact that meat is so delicious to our palate
Particularly fatty.
suggests that it's exactly what our body wants to be nourished fully.
not true.
I just don't
This is
find
not
that
true.
true.
This
I
is a
never
very
was like,
nuanced topic for
yeah,
a few reasons.
give me the fat.
First I'll mention is that we live in a society where most of the food at our grocery store that is available to us in unlimited abundance was never actually available to us for the majority of our
isn't
time
food.
as a species. And this confuses things, right? We have this food that is engineered to be hyper palatable. So,
Yeah,
you know,
That's-
we can't
Coca-Cola.
completely make a blanket
It's true.
statement that everything that we want to put in our mouth is going to be good for us.
Okay, good.
But if we look at only natural foods, foods that were actually available to the human species for the majority of our time,
But why do they have to be available for the human species for the majority of our time? Like why is that? So like, let's say when we first evolved or we first became Homo sapiens sapiens, there were 4 food options: dead animal, bark, some type of like other root vegetable, and whatever, eggs, right? Why are those the only foods we have to stick to when we know that there are not only so many other beneficial foods available, but we have more advanced technology?
right. Again, it's just like backwards evolution.
Right.
You know, like it's not. That's the whole point of evolution.
Are you also going to give up your home, your car?
Right.
Like, here's the thing: if you're somebody that literally wants to be a caveman, I can at least respect the
feel like-
consistency there.
I feel like that's kind of the vibe that he's giving right now with
But
this
he's wearing a
this
collared
background.
shirt. He's got a microphone. He's wearing a collared shirt.
He's like, I'm in the dark.
I love that all these primal people, the only thing they don't want to give up is their meat. Everything else, the only thing they want to stick to primally is their meat, right? But everything else when it comes to, you know, the antibiotics, modern medicine, modern technology, they all want to keep that because it helps them. But all of a sudden with meat, oh no, we can't go past what we did hundreds of thousands of years ago.
we can see that of those natural foods, meat is the most delicious of them all. We also have sugar cravings, but this is likely, I think, because sugar wasn't.
I think I'm not interested in what you think.
Hold on. Meat is the most delicious out of all the foods that are natural? Have you ever had a raspberry, strawberry, blueberry? You're telling me red meat, raw meat, or like cooked meat with no spices or seasoning is more delicious than a fresh strawberry? Come on. That's just not true. That's just a lie.
Yeah.
Widely available, especially like it is now for the millennia that we've been becoming into ourselves, right?
Hold on,
And
so
so
he
when we do have
thinks-
an opportunity,
So he thinks that we have sugar cravings because they're just so available.
Right. Well, I mean, again, we run on carbohydrates, which are sugars. And again, why is it only in his diet? So like when we crave fat, oh, it's evolutionary
Right.
advantageous. Oh, it's because meat is intuitive, this and that. But when we crave sugar, it's because of Coca-Cola
just
in the last
available.
100 years.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't seem fair at all. We've been eating fruit for a long time. I'm not an evolutionary scientist, so I don't know exactly what we were eating, but we definitely have been eating fruit for a lot longer than just since processed food was around.
in the past, we would have gorged on it, but we never would have had access to it in the abundance we do now. So there are little nuances. Other people might say, well, I'm not attracted to meat at all. I don't have a taste for it. And that might be the case. And I think, humans can be very conditioned. If you've been vegetarian your whole life, you would lose that taste for meat. And obviously the mentality of, I don't want to eat an animal, it ruins the sense for you. It convinces you to be repulsed by the idea.
No. Just not true for me.
Yeah, so Julia wasn't vegetarian at all.
No,
She's from the
growing
South.
up, like I ate buffalo chicken sandwiches all the time. They made me sick. And they just freaked me out. It wasn't that, I was definitely not raised to be vegetarian.
Especially what freaked me out as a kid was getting the little arteries. When you get the arteries or the veins in the meat.
Oh God, yeah, the
and
cartilage
you like chew on
in
it.
the chicken
Oh,
nuggets at
Jesus.
McDonald's. That stuff freaks
And they just
me
don't
out.
they don't explain to you that you're eating the flesh of another animal. Like
No.
he's saying as if like people are being brainwashed.
Right.
It makes way more sense to be freaked out by dead body parts. Like you're literally eating dead like flesh that was cooked, that was
Right,
seared.
carcass.
Very similar flesh, if not almost exactly like the flesh on our bones. You know, muscle tissue, fat tissue. Like I don't think it's a matter of brainwashing. I think
Right.
that the fact that it does come from a dead animal should turn you off.
Right.
Especially because we don't have to eat it now, right? In survival time, sure, you maybe, even though you might have been turned off or sad about the animal you killed, you might have had to sculpt it down because you had to live. But now, you can be repulsed. You're allowed to be like, you know what? That's fair. That's gross. I'm gonna go do
That's
something else.
gross.
There's this old thing that the plant-based
Oh.
community says, where it's like, okay, if you
old
take
thing.
a kid and give them an apple or a live
Oh my God, I
chicken,
just said this.
you know, it's gonna eat the apple and just chill with the chicken.
That's
and you know
exactly
what?
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look,
Fair enough.
fair enough.
But
There we go.
If you give that same kid an apple and a juicy burger patty, just pure fatty meat, I guarantee they're gonna go for the fatty meat.
Yeah, because it might be higher calories or seasoned to perfection,
Or the bread.
or the bread.
You know,
But-
I'm not gonna look at a juicy fat patty and go, but like the bread.
But even if
Yeah.
that baby does, again, once you've removed the process it takes to getting that burger
Right.
patty, yeah, they might. If you that you want to talk about brainwashing, you're talking about plant-based community brainwashing. Taking a chicken, slitting its throat, defeathering it, boiling it, chopping it up, putting it on a grill, breading it, spicing it up, giving it to a little baby, and not telling them what it took to get that burger
Right.
or get that patty. That to me is brainwashing and lying.
Right. Yeah, because what'd you do to get the apple? Right.
There we go.
So like if the child watched the apple being
Yeah. Well,
plucked, they're fine. If they watch that whole process with the chicken,
Scarred
they're
for life.
traumatized.
That's what-
They're crying and screaming.
I don't know who said it, but recently I heard somebody say, like, they invite people to come apple picking. So people go apple picking, pumpkin picking, strawberry picking, all
Right.
types of picking.
That's
No
true.
one's going to pick your own chicken at a slaughterhouse.
Right.
Come slaughter your own chicken because it's horrific and it's unsanitary and it's awful.
Meat. And that is a child with a pure palate that is ready to eat what is going to be nourishing for its body, making a clear decision. Okay,
Why is
I
he so
remember when I was
obsessed
a
with his
kid,
palate?
you eat the soup and you kind of
Because he's
pick
been
out the meat
starving
chunks
for
because that's what your body
years.
wants the most. What is desirable is
sweet, sweet
nourishing.
palate.
Surely you're not going to
What is
suggest that
desirable
even
is
though
nourishing?
every other animal can eat with that natural intuition, humans can't. Like
No.
it just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, so changing gears a little, let's look at anatomy, all right? Why, if we're not carnivores, does meat digest so perfectly?
Doesn't.
And further, why have humans lost nearly all of our adaptations and the actual mechanisms in our body to digest plants well? If you
Where is he getting that from? And I'm sure he might explain, but I digest plants fine. And actually, red meat or meat consumption is associated with colon cancer, right? There's a stronger association. It increases the risk of colon cancer. Why? I'd have to look at the studies, but I know I've read the studies. It does increase the risk of colon cancer for sure.
you look at the great apes, and it doesn't matter if you prescribe to the theory of evolution or you believe in divine creation, you're either understanding we evolved from a common ancestor or you're just comparing ourselves to our closest genetic animal on the planet. And you can see that like the great apes have different digestive systems to allow them to digest plant fibers. Apes and other herbivorous animals can actually digest cellulose. They can digest plant fibers. Humans can't do this. I mean, technically speaking, no vertebrate can
Is there
digest
something
plant fiber, but
screaming
they
in
have
the
gut
background? I think
bacteria,
it's
okay?
monkey sounds. Or
Apes
something.
have hindgut
Where is he?
fermentation. They have a cecum. Okay, we can clearly see in our anatomy that we have an appendix, which is an atrophied cecum. We have been losing these abilities to digest plants effectively. And this is very important, okay? Because
It's not. None of this
nature is
actually
very
supports that we
efficient
can't
with
digest
how it
plants.
manages its resources. And the evolution of a species is always going to continue to evolve attributes that favor its survival, okay? If you have a particular attribute that favors your ability to survive, those genes get passed down. So anything that doesn't get passed down is not by accident, it's incredibly intentional. So to me, the only logical explanation
I think what makes more sense is that while, yeah, apes are more evolved, or sorry, apes have more advantages to digest plant matter, especially like, you know, stems and grasses and whatever, right? Things that we can't normally digest. They don't digest animal products very well. And when it comes to humans, we are opportunistic eaters, right? If we could only survive on one or the other, we may have died out, right? So the evolutionary trait, if I had to guess, is the fact that we can eat both, that we can do both very well. We might not be perfectly adapted to digesting either one, but we can do both very well. And that's why we have to look at the science. If we can eat plants and we can eat meat, what does the science tell us is better for our health? But above all, even if eating nothing but meat would be just as healthy as eating plants, it is the immoral position. When we don't have to kill these animals to live a healthy life, to live the life we want to live, why would we do it?
Right.
Explanation for why we would have lost these adaptations to digest plants is because we weren't using them. And nature is smart. You know, if you don't use your arm for a year, it atrophies, it withers, it shrinks because we are managing our resources efficiently. So while we can gain some nourishment from plants,
no.
So
that's it.
So they're like, you know, if you lay in bed all day, your body's gonna wither away because nature's smart. It's
right.
Like, I don't know if that's like that. I would say that's a consequence of not using your body. I don't know if that's a like
nature is smart.
Yeah.
Right. It's gonna send supplies to what needs supplies. So if you're not using your legs, then it's gonna stop sending supplies there, I guess.
But
you should use your legs.
You shouldn't not. Yeah. I don't know the point that he's making there.
Optimal for our species, why would we not have these adaptations to make it more sustainable and more beneficial for our bodies? Like it doesn't make sense to me, okay? So continuing down the rabbit hole of anatomy, why is our stomach pH so acidic and much more ideal for digesting meat? If we were meant to be digesting plants, why would it be so acidic?
I actually don't. So I don't know anything about the pH of our stomach acid.
Yeah, I don't either.
The acid, but I will say is that if we just take a look here really quick, does he cite any studies? No, of course not. Okay, so that's the thing is he probably read this in some kind of carnivore form or something. Like, again, even if our pH is very acidic to digest meat, that doesn't say anything about how healthy a plant-based diet is. So again, I don't know too much about the stomach pH, but
the pH of scavenger animals that prey on carrion than it is herbivorous animals. And the commonly accepted theory for this is that our first herbivorous animal
0.5, 1.5, 1.4 to 2, 4 to 6. Okay, so we're right in the middle. So again, I would probably say that it's so that we can survive on both.
It's opportunistic, right? Exactly.
Right. That would make sense to me, but this guy has his own truths in a sense.
Animals. And the commonly accepted theory for this is that our first taste of the juicy meats was from carrion, was from breaking apart bones and eating bone marrow. So it actually makes a lot of sense as to why our stomach pH would be so acidic. You know, why do we have such a big gallbladder for emulsifying fat if the way that people tend to operate well on a plant-based diet is a high carb, low fat? And why would our body favor high carb, high sugar and maintain such a large organ for digesting fat? And like we have 4 organs working in concert just to digest fat. And yet to suggest we're not carnivores suggests that, I mean, okay, you could eat a high fat vegan diet, although it's not really as easy given that most of your calories come from carbohydrates. Like why would we base our eating in that way and yet our body would favor these organs that all want to assimilate and digest and emulsify fat?
So having organs that digest fat or are good at processing fat doesn't actually tell us about the health outcomes of a high fat diet. Like for example, our bodies are designed to where if we get a cut, it's going to heal itself. So it doesn't mean that we are supposed to, or we're like designed to get cuts, right? We've realized that is a negative thing. It's a bad thing. We want to avoid damage to our skin and our body, but our bodies are really are really good at repairing itself, right? I would argue the same thing could be said about our organs, right? We have things that can detoxify and process things or process, different substances, whatever, even though we're not supposed to. Right? How come our liver can digest alcohol? Are we designed to drink alcohol? So I don't think that actually tells us anything.
To wrap up this point, it's like we can see from our anatomy that we're genetically adapted to be on a more carnivorous style of eating. And this is very important because if we were meant to favor plants, we would have these adaptations that other animals have that do have plants as the predominant source of their calories, but we don't.
I think he's a rooster back there. I think that's what that is.
If humans aren't carnivores, then why did our brains need to develop to be so big and complex? And more interestingly, why is it that at the start of the agricultural revolution, we can actually see our bodies start to physically degenerate? Our stature got smaller, and subsequently, our brain size actually got smaller, right?
So last time I checked, the size of something doesn't determine the capacity or like the ability. I'm not just talking about penises, by the way.
Yeah, you are.
Maybe, but elephants. So like elephants have way bigger brains than humans. Are elephants more advanced cognitively than humans? No. It's not just the size of the brain. There's a lot more that goes into it. So to say that, well, human brains didn't get bigger because we stopped eating meat or we focused more on like grains and carbs. Again, I'd love to see a research paper or something supporting that. He's kind of just saying things. But even if that's the case, clearly, seeing as how much we've accomplished, I really don't think the size of the brain would have made a whole lot of a difference.
And I think too, like as we become more intelligent as a species, like we're not using our bodies as much, right? Like we don't need to be maybe so big because we're not fighting off, I guess, predators. Like
that could be also,
or you know, like
that's a great point. Yeah.
I was thinking about like cell phones, right? Like they've gotten smaller, but they're far more advanced than they used to be. And I feel like we kind of work that way as a species.
And just think about it. I think you make a great point how, like, let's say we did, when we were first developing into Homo sapiens, we did have to go out and hunt and scavenge and ward off predators, right? A big stature would have helped, right? Or we would have been doing a lot more maybe strength-related exercise or maybe whatever it was that could have been advantageous then. But as soon as we start kind of industrial food practices, agriculture, farming, we no longer need to rely on warding off predators, hunting prey, doing all of these things. So that could be an explanation as to why our bodies weren't as big as maybe they were. So again, none of this actually proves anything about being a carnivore.
Right. It's almost giving kind of a toxic masculinity.
Right.
Oh yeah, well, how come I'm smaller?
How come my penis isn't as big as it's supposed to be? Because of the goddamn plants.
Right? Surely, if plants were optimal for us, we would have seen the opposite of this happen. We would have seen our vitality increase. We would have seen our stature continue to much as it was.
Height does not mean vitality.
How much bigger could we have gotten? I don't know what that means.
To me, my kind of
worse on our joints.
Right.
Makes sense to me is like, you don't need a lot of brain power to pick a fruit.
I hope he's short. I hope he's super short.
We can look at the great apes and see that they are very intelligent compared to most animals, but they pale in comparison to humans. Like our cerebral cortex, our brain size in general, I think it's 3 times the size of theirs. Okay, this is a huge difference in our ability to think. And
how much bigger do our brains have to be?
Using this brain that I have, that the only thing that really makes sense in terms of accomplishing when it comes to that evolutionary advantage, again, Mother Nature is so deliberate with the evolution of the attributes of a species in favorable ways. We needed this brain power to make tools, to strategize, to track and hunt these big game animals. And I don't see any other application
but the
for
size
it. You can't argue that we needed these big brains to learn how to start agriculture or whatever, because our brains were at the pinnacle of their size before agriculture even began. So yeah, I don't know. Guys, if you have any answers to these questions, please enlighten me.
A delicious power breakfast.
He's blowing his own
Cheerios.
So is he saying our brains have gotten smaller?
He's saying what it sounds like he's saying, without any scientific research supporting this. It sounds like he's saying that they were at a larger size before industrial farming practices. Which, again, even if that's true, I don't know if that's even true, but even if that is true, what does that have to do with cognitive ability?
He's not providing any kind of connection or like what's his point?
Right. There are plenty of really intelligent animals who don't have very large brains, right? We could look at, I don't know, octopi, right? I don't know how large of a brain octopi is, but it's smaller than ours if I had to guess, right? Or elephants. Elephants are really smart animals, but their brains are huge compared to ours. We're definitely more intelligent and have more of an awareness consciousness.
Right, yeah, good point.
Yeah. There are bigger animals in the animal kingdom compared to us.
Yeah, like I wouldn't just take the size of a brain.
Yeah, and also how much bigger, like it could have been that, again, well, we've already said this, so we're just going to move on.
Yeah.
Recent history, okay? if humans are not carnivores, then why is it that in the last 100 years, we've seen a steady decrease due to a lot of propaganda and fraudulent information? We've seen this steady decrease in saturated fat, which comes...
Okay, you said propaganda and what did you say? Fraudulent information. He has created a video citing no information,
Right.
just going off his own mental truths. But there are tons of peer-reviewed literature supporting the correlation between saturated fat and heart disease. There just is. I don't know what to tell you. You could say it's fraudulent. You could say that you could have like kind of some conspiracy, but there just is.
Yeah, especially with saturated fat, I feel like there is so much research out there that I'm shocked that this is even still up for debate. I mean, it's really not, but I feel like people like obviously carnivores are the only ones saying this. Like like there's no research that shows otherwise.
Right. And the only so you do have an occasional study that tries to discredit saturated fat or specifically like LDL cholesterol in its connection to cardiovascular disease or heart disease. But usually those studies are very, very flawed and they're few and far between. Yeah. For those of you who haven't seen it, there was a debate between Dr. Matthew Nagra and Anthony Chaffee. Anthony Chaffee. Anthony Chaffee is a carnivore, well-known carnivore person on the internet. And he got absolutely obliterated because any sources that he had, Matthew Nagra quickly picked apart. Matthew Nagra had better sources. And then a lot of the things that Anthony Chaffee was saying, he couldn't even support with any valid sources. So again, it was a whole mess. So most of these carnivore claims are really unsubstantiated.
It's predominantly from fatty meats, from red meats, but we also see the decrease in butter, in whole raw milk, in all of these things that I think are natural human foods. They are all on the decline. Okay, and in theory,
so just to touch upon the raw milk, because he said whole raw milk, the reason why raw milk was banned is because it's dangerous, right? You can get really, really sick. People have gotten really, really sick from raw milk. You could even see there's I don't know if the Instagram Carnivore Cringe has posted it, but people have talked about how sick they have gotten from raw milk, even to today.
And what's natural about it? Like, can you imagine
Sucking
seeing
off the
someone
milk?
just, like drinking from a cow's teat? There's nothing natural about it.
That's not intuitive.
Right. I don't know. Yeah, like there's just nothing natural about that.
Again, it sounds like he's just like a conspiracy theorist. He thinks that despite the health and all of the data, which he's not citing, supporting saturated fat and raw milk, they're just the man is just keeping it away, keeping it banned, so that way we all get sick and unwell.
If our health was inversely related, we should see an increase in our health, right? Because we're consuming more plants. But in reality, we see the opposite.
There's other things going on.
I know this is just cool.
Yeah, so point to me how many Americans are eating a predominantly whole food plant-based diet or a completely whole food plant-based diet. Point to me the Americans that are doing that.
Right.
The reason why people's health is going down the toilet is not because of plants, it's because of the processed foods in addition to the fatty meats, the saturated fat, processed meats. So when you see people eating plants, it's pizza crust and donuts and processed cereals and a ton of other processed foods, right? You're not seeing people eat a whole food plant-based diet and their health declining.
Right. You're really I feel like there's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a lot of vegan content out there that's like extra large loaded nachos. And yes, they're vegan. It's like, that is not what we're suggesting for optimal health.
Those are not health foods.
It's cool that if you do want extra large loaded nachos, you can get them vegan.
We know that loaded nachos, vegan or not, isn't healthy. Right? We know that burgers, cookies, cakes, hot dogs, all these things have been known to be unhealthy due to the processing, due to the saturated fat, due to the high calorie count potentially. Like we know all of these things. It's great that there are vegan options for people who are going to eat the unhealthy foods anyway.
Right.
But to say that the health of people in America or in the world declined because of a higher intake of plants, I mean, if you want to call a highly processed honey bun technically plants because it's made out of wheat, sure, but I think that's incredibly dishonest.
Yeah.
correlation doesn't necessarily imply causation. There's a lot of other factors, including lack of sleep, stress, the toxicity and pollution in our environment.
Okay. Great.
But I don't think it should be dismissed. It's very interesting. Among this trend of demonizing red meat, so, Ansel Keys put out his 7-nation study, which was just cherry-picked information of the 23 countries he actually studied to just try and demonize red meat. There's been a lot of fraudulent activity.
So I have heard a lot of carnivores talk about the Ansel Keys and how sugar industry paid them off or something. I haven't looked into it myself. I'm sure other vegan channels, if Lifting Vegan Logic didn't do it, probably Mike the Vegan did something. I'm sure they've debunked that or looked into it. But even if that's the case, there's a ton of other scientific literature supporting a higher saturated fat intake, higher animal product intake equals worse health outcomes, whether it's higher risk factor for certain cancers, heart disease, etc.
Going on in the dietary guidelines world, right? So in 1977, the FDA posted new dietary guidelines, which we can now see, it's been proven that this was based on fraudulent scientific literature. The sugar industry paid off the scientists to put out fraudulent studies to essentially demonize saturated fat and exonerate sugar from any blame for, at the time, the big thing was heart disease, but all problems in general. So what's interesting is in 1977, from that point on, in theory, Americans drastically decreased their consumption of saturated fat in favor of more sugar in their diet. So if this was ideal...
Okay, but that's also stupid. Why? Nobody is saying that processed sugar, concentrated sugar is healthy either. No, we already know that's not true, right? So again,
Right, no one's saying replace that with sugar.
Right, replace all your saturated fat with processed sugar. Nope, nobody would recommend that.
Right.
More carbs, less fat. We should see a reduction in the rates of heart disease. But in reality...
Not necessarily, because it's not just more carbs, less fat. It's the quality of the food. It's the complex carbohydrates, the fiber intake, the micronutrient intake. Right. It's not just you take out the saturated fat and fill in the carbs with whatever you want. Margarine, even though it may have, or like vegan butters, it may have less saturated fat, it's still a processed oil blend that's still high in fat, devoid of any micronutrients. So you definitely shouldn't be eating a lot of plant-based butter instead of regular butter, right? Ideally, you can avoid both of them for health.
I think over the next 20 years, it tripled. It went substantially up. What's interesting, though, and this is a bit of my own conspiracy theorism here, but... it's kind of obvious, I think. The rates of heart disease went up at that point, but the deaths from heart disease continue to actually steadily decline. What does that tell us? It tells us that the pharmaceutical company is...
Every carnivore says this, where the rates went up, the deaths went down because the medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry, they were developing drugs, selling those drugs to keep people alive, even though heart disease was more prevalent. And that may be true. That has nothing to do with the health of a plant-based diet. Another thing here is he's under the assumption that red meat, he said, since the 70s has been demonized and the consumption of red meat has gone down. I would love to see numbers for that. Again, I see advertisements for red meat everywhere. Animal products, so like I think it's like 98% of the world are still eating animal products. The vast majority of people still eat meat, red meat, chicken, pork, all these things. So to say that, again, it's like he's implying that the majority of people are eating plants or predominantly plant-based and heart disease is skyrocketing.
If I was thinking too, if anything, and again, I would have to see numbers, but I would guess that the consumption of red meat has gone up.
Yeah, just based on the processed food, the advertising, I would not be surprised. I'm actually going to look into that, but like...
Right, he's acting like everyone has been plant-based.
Yeah, that's not true.
And heart disease has gone up at the same time. It's just not...
Show me the majority of the United States eating predominantly fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and then we can compare the rates of heart disease. But just eating more processed food, and a lot of that processed food, including processed meats, pepperoni, sausage, breakfast patties, whatever it is. So ham,
turkey.
So like, I don't, again, based on everything I've seen, just with advertisements, with everything, and I want to look at the actual numbers, but I would be very shocked if red meat has significantly gone down at all.
Winning, right? Because there's no money in dead people, but there's also no money in healthy people. The money is right in the middle. And these dietary guidelines seem to fit the bill because people they weren't dying from heart disease, but its prevalence was actually increasing. Anyways, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent.
Oh, here we
If
go,
humans
baby.
are not carnivores,
Ancestral
why is
wisdom.
it that indigenous populations seen all over the globe always favor animal foods as the predominant source of their calories?
Really high in calories, really high in protein, and if they're eating organs, it probably has concentrated doses of vitamins. There's no arguing that eating animal flesh and eating animal organs has vitamins, has minerals, has protein, has calories.
Right.
No one's
Right.
arguing that. It's just, can you get those same vitamins, minerals, and nutrients
Without killing animals.
without killing animals
Yes.
from plants? Yes.
So why wouldn't you?
With supplementation, with fortified foods. So why wouldn't we? Especially when we have seen better health outcomes. And I'm sure he's going to touch on this, but those indigenous tribes, I would love to see their average life expectancy, right? Because we're talking about in a modern civilization, in a first world country, most people live till they're 65, 70, 80, 90. People are pushing 100 now, right? So there's no doubt that a diet filled with animal products can probably get you in with pretty minimal hiccups till you're 30, 40.
Right. Yeah. No one's arguing
Yeah.
that.
Maybe 50, right? But it's when humans start to live longer, do we have to look at the long-term health effects, and that's where we see heart disease and all these other dietary-related diseases really be problematic.
Why is that? Why is that? Okay. There are many cultures observed that actually lived almost exclusively on meat, at least for portions of the year.
Probably the
And
only food they
carbs
had
and sugars
available.
were very minimal in their diet. Some indigenous groups included them a little bit more, and they knew how to properly prepare them. But unanimously across the board, when it came to the strength of their warriors, the fertility of their women, animal foods were sacred to them. Now, why would that be the case if this was not linked to some benefit that they could clearly see? And it's important to
There
note
is a
that they
benefit to
lived
them.
healthfully. They didn't suffer from the alphabet of diseases that we have in the Western world. They were
Probably
called the
all
diseases
food was sacred to them.
Hold on. First of all, just for a second.
from the
hold on.
alphabet of disease.
Okay, so where are you getting this from? Right? You're telling me that not a single, like these indigenous tribes, they didn't get depression or cancer, bronchitis? Like, what are you talking about? They never got the flu. They never got influenza. They never got sick in their life. All these indigenous tribes, they lived till they were 100. They had no dietary related diseases, and all they were eating was red meat.
It's just not true.
Just give me a break, bro. Like, show me some science. But no, like you said, you're relying on ancestral wisdom.
Well, also, I would say it's like probably connected to one, they didn't live as long, and two, they didn't document things like depression.
Yeah, they didn't have modern healthcare. So how are we supposed to accurately track what they were experiencing?
Right.
Also, I also always like how carnivores point to like the indigenous tribes who predominantly eat meat. What about the blue zones? Now, I know, again, I don't really like this type of science, but some of the longest living populations, so blue zones, for those of you that don't know, it's areas in the world where they have the longest living people for the population. So like the most amount of people that live the longest, if that makes sense. So the blue zones, what we observe there is that the people there are predominantly eating plant-based, right? They do have some animal products, usually maybe like a Mediterranean diet, or like in Okinawa where they have some fish and some other meat, but predominantly they're eating plant-based. And they have the longest living populations of people. So again, we could play this game both ways.
Diseases that we have in the Western world. They were called the diseases of the West for that specific reason. You know, if humans aren't carnivores, why do we see indigenous populations thriving, living in a carnivorous or at least hyper-carnivorous way? This probably should have been included in the anatomy part, but if humans aren't carnivores, why is it that when we eat a more meat-based diet, our jaws, our sinus cavities, our face actually develops fully? Our wisdom teeth are actually able to come in because my thoughts.
Okay, so what I love about this, again, I don't know what the context is for this. I haven't looked into Weston. I know that Lifting Vegan Logic has debunked or looked into the Weston A price thing, but it kind of looks like they're taken in the same place. Now, maybe they're not. I don't know. The black and white photos, they still look pretty in the middle of nowhere.
Well, also, like what's developed fully, I would say. Like,
right.
If you're chewing harder and more on like on meat, then yes, you will
might
have
have
a
more
stronger
jaw muscles and
right. But like that goes for anything. It's not necessarily, I would say, like fully like you're underdeveloped.
yeah. You just look
if you don't
different.
have the biggest jaw muscles in the world.
Right. No, 100%. You might just look different based on the food you're eating. But
And
also,
like maybe I don't need those big jaw muscles if I'm eating more plants, and that's fine.
yeah. And also when you look at these photos, like again, he's just kind of saying this. I wish he would actually put some literature because here's the thing. He's making the claims, right?
He's making a lot of claims. The fraudulent studies, never heard anything about what studies he's talking about, how they were fraudulent. What does that mean? Like, what's he talking about?
Yeah. I mean, he did mention just that the sugar industry, but he didn't actually show anything supporting his claims. Also in this, it's just two photos. One, he labeled Western diet. One, he labeled meat diet. This is incredibly misleading.
Right.
What is this telling us?
Yeah, where are these photos from?
Like, I'll tell you one thing. I've been vegan for almost 7 years. I have not lost my teeth. My teeth don't look like that. Were they not brushing their teeth? What was the situation?
Right.
Are that we have the necessary nourishment, the nutrition, the nutrients, the vitamins, minerals, and we also have the resistance training of chewing. There's a lot of misinformation, I think, about wisdom teeth out there. But if you look at, there's actual populations, there's physical, anecdotal evidence of...
Look at that guy in the top right. Clearly, he's eating a diet of whole fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and he only has 2 teeth left. This is the danger of plant-based diets.
This is what happens to you when you eat plants.
Look at the people on the left.
Look how happy they are.
So happy, a mouth full of teeth.
If you
joy.
eat meat,
they're overjoyed. Like, what are we talking about?
This is so misleading.
At least provide some like context here. I could look up the context.
I feel like it's kind of rude. Something's rude about this.
It is kind of rude.
Cultures that ate more meat and their faces developed properly. They have strong...
There's no information on this.
We've got to stop with this.
Yeah, no,
you can't just put a kid with like really messed up teeth and be like, see
what happens.
What the Western diet does?
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, give us some more information.
Teeth that actually come in and don't cause a problem. This, I think, is very important to consider.
All right, here we go.
If humans aren't carnivores and are therefore designed to metabolize carbs and sugar on a more plant-based way of eating, why is it that babies eating their most pure, the most optimal form of food that you could ever conceive for humans, that being breast milk, babies drinking breast milk are actually living in a ketogenic state, burning fat, burning ketones.
Guys, okay, so if you look at other mammals, cows, guess what they do when they're born? When a calf is born, calf drinks breast milk. And guess what they live their life doing? Eating grass. They literally can get all their nutrients from grass.
Right.
Just because you drink breast milk because that's what your body can digest as a baby has nothing to do with what's going to be healthy for you long term when you're an adult.
Right. It doesn't mean you keep drinking someone's breast milk, aka cows.
Exactly. Not your milk, buddy.
Get your own milk.
I know you want that nice chiseled jaw, but it's not your milk, buddy. Also, yeah, when you look at apes too. Apes, all mammals breastfeed, and then they eat plants or meat, right? Like, even if we look at actual carnivores, I know this guy likes to think he's a carnivore at 150 pounds, but if we look at actual carnivores, look at lions, guess what? They eat meat. They don't drink other species' milk. They don't drink milk.
They don't have milk from, That's a great point.
The most optimal food for human consumption, breast milk, as an adult? Dude, this guy's like 35 years old.
As the predominant source of their fuel. They aren't burning sugar and carbs like is commonly thought we're supposed to do as our natural metabolism. In fact...
Also, I actually have to look this up. Again, he's not providing any sources, but I know milk has carbs. Milk is super high in sugar, lactose. So milk has carbs. So I actually don't know if this is true. Now just thinking about milk and lactose. I don't know if human breast milk is different. Yeah, so that's interesting.
Most animals in nature run in this ketogenic state and are actually fat burning, okay? A gorilla, for example, yes, it eats leaves and berries, but it's not running on carbs. It's actually utilizing its gut fermentation, and the bacteria are breaking down the sugars and the cellulose, and then they're in turn absorbing saturated fat, pure saturated fatty acids. A cow eats grass, which is 5% fat, but they actually digest the gut bacteria, which allows them to digest 85, 90% fat in their diet.
I don't know if this is true, but either way, that doesn't really tell us about human health. But also, a ketogenic state isn't necessarily... I know he's saying that most wild animals are on a ketogenic state. Even if that's true, that could be a survival adaptation, right? They could be they could be avoiding starvation because they are in a ketogenic state. those animals don't have readily available food, right? So
Right. That's
for
true.
animals who actually need to scavenge and find food, being able to turn fat into fuel might be very helpful. Same thing with humans. Like if I ran out of food all of a sudden, right, I would go into a ketogenic state, right, after a while or whatever. But that doesn't mean it's optimal for like day to day when you have food available.
Okay, it's seen all around nature that animals are living in this ketogenic state, and babies, human babies, eating the most natural food mirror that, right? So why do we think that as we get older, we're supposed to shift into this sugar metabolism? I don't get it.
It's not for you to get. It's just like we run on carbs. I don't know what to tell you. Oh, endurance.
All right, guys, I'm getting to the end of this rant, but here's a really good one. If humans aren't carnivores, why do we have one of the best endurance running capabilities on the entire planet, right? We're up there with dogs, horses, wolves are dogs, and ostriches, and camels. Like this is incredible. And again, like I said earlier, evolutionary attributes don't happen by accident. For something to stick with a species and prove to shape the course of its genetics, it has to be very important. And the only application that I see for distance endurance running is the predation of animals. Like it really does very little in terms of surviving from other animals that are predating us. You can't distance outrun a lion. You know, lions, tigers, and bears, they're all faster than us. So the only purpose I see this serving is our ability to hunt and track animals. And we see tribes still to this day utilizing this attribute. If we weren't carnivores, why would we have this incredible skill set? You know, it's rare among the animal kingdom.
What? Am I missing something? I feel like that just did not click for me.
So what he's saying is, well, honey, be careful.
Oh, sorry.
What he's saying is, well, we have this tremendous ability to we have really good endurance, right? So we could walk for long periods of time, run. We have good stamina, and that's predominantly used for hunting prey.
Oh, like he's saying we can run fast because we need to be running after animals to kill them.
Yeah, and not fast, but run, like maintain endurance, have good endurance, so we could run for long periods of time, track animals, chase them down, whatever.
I would say then why wouldn't we run faster?
Well, maybe, but also let's just say that is the case, right? Again, I think humans are better qualified as opportunistic. So yeah, maybe we did have to run to hunt those animals,
Right.
But that doesn't mean we're just carnivorous. Like that, I don't know where you're getting that from. You can't just come to that conclusion. If we have better health outcomes with a predominantly whole food plant-based diet, I don't care if I could run as fast as a cheetah, right? I'm still going to eat what the best science tells us we should be eating.
And finally, maybe some of the most conclusive evidence
Jesus.
of a human's diet. Why is it that if we look
Still
at
don't get
stable
that last
isotope
point.
studies, we
It's
can
okay,
see that looking at bone collagen from fossils of the last, let's say 300,000 years that we've been Homo sapiens, we can see the makeup of these early humans' diets. And it's always seen to be 80% or more large ruminant animals. It shows that we're the apex predator of our time.
Apex
at
predator,
any given
baby.
time in history. We have a higher carnivore rating
guy's vicious,
than the
man.
other carnivores around in the same time period. How do you reconcile that if we're not carnivores?
Oh, thank God. And that might be true. Again, that might be true. That tells us nothing about what is beneficial for us in the modern day.
Right.
Okay, we did not have the technology we have now back then. Yeah, maybe 80% of them did, or maybe 80% of the diets were animal products. Okay.
Yeah, what does that have to do with health?
How long did they live till? What conditions did they have?
A lot less, a lot worse.
Yeah, I know that there have been mummies and remains found with atherosclerosis, with actual plaque in their arteries showing signs of heart disease. Like, we know this, but again, just going off of what he's presenting, there's nothing definitive you could make here at all.
I think this is actually a really terrible way to go about life by saying, like, we used to do this, so what are we doing now? You know what I mean? Like, let's go back and do what we just used to do without providing a why.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's just like saying, well, we used to do this, so how come?
Right. Because all of the science shows that what we're doing now with fortified food, supplementation, whole food plant-based diet does lead to better health outcomes.
Right, with everything. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like we're going in a great direction actually by changing what we've done in
Yeah.
the past, right? Think about it like therapy, I mean, everything,
Yeah.
right? Like, the whole point is to do things differently than we used to do because we are evolving as a species. This seems to really be going backwards.
With advancing technology comes new opportunities to cause less harm, produce more well-being, and I'm sure he's going to do his roundup, but I actually don't want to hear it. I think we'll end it here. I think regardless, so even if everything's saying, again, let's grant that some of it has weight or some of it is valid, which I don't think, again, he didn't provide any sources, so we don't know. But we know that whole food plant-based diets are healthy, right? Whether carnivore diets can be healthy as well, that's a different argument. But we know whole food plant-based diets can be healthy. We are great examples of that, even though that's anecdotal. So if you can be healthy on a whole food plant-based diet, I don't care if it doesn't date back millions of years. I don't care if we have smaller brains because none of that matters, right? If we can do that, not exploit and kill billions of animals and have better health outcomes, let's do that. Why would we not do that? Any last words?
Go vegan.
Go vegan, everybody. Hopefully you'll see us in the next episode breaking down some carnivore nonsense.